All right, so I believe we're live now, and I wonder if you can see me. Can you see? Can you see what I'm doing? Let's check and see what is on YouTube. If I'm live, if it's live, then we're going to enter into a ritual together. If I'm live. Oh, here. If it's live, then we're going to. Cool. I guess we're gonna try this and see how it goes. So, welcome to the next series of boom, 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 boom. Here we are. Okay. Gong, 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 gong. Hello. This is how I'm going to talk into the camera. So, yeah, we're going to enter into these poetic sewing reflections and dialogues with our process, our creative process of remaking with these used garments. And so here I have what we're going to start with is something that I already began working on spring of 2020. And there's a link in the description of me wearing this. It started out as 2 separate shirts, and through like a process of draping and dancing while wearing the materials, I was cutting them up and like reforming them into something new. Actually, there's another shirt here. There's like a 3rd shirt, and then there's like some flowers I found on the street. There's like a hair tie I found on the street, but it's definitely a work in progress because I started dancing with it and I was pinning it and cutting it, and I started sewing it together, but right now it really needs some like intricate stitches. And so I'm going to start with a poem. Well, actually, first I'm going to start with us entering into the plane of imagination together, because that's what we've done before with our sewing rituals. So we enter into this plane together by raising the flag of imagination. And so calling on the elements as we stand on the land, acknowledging the land that we stand on, which is Coast Salish territory occupied. And so standing on this land, standing on the earth, with the sky above and the sea that surrounds us. We call on the elements of fire, water, earth, and air. And to guide us through this process of transformation of self and also of the materials and the lives of the materials that we're working with. So I'll put this off to the side for now, but the flag is still raised. And now we wrote a poem about the movement that this felt to be encapsulating as it was being like as a life source was being fused into it through like a new movement, giving charging these materials with this new feeling and new stage of like recognition. And the poem that we're going to be working with as we tend to the finishings of all of this goes: fruit is sun glow, pull through dreaded shoulder, relaxed shoulders, warmth I am egg escape shell, held by wonder, emerge through blackened backs, shadows turned, face to the sun, to the fruit. Morning turns and swells, responsive in rising. So sewing these materials. So what's calling out now? The egg escape shell. It's like this shell. This is a shell to one's body. Now, it was alive and draping on the body. And now it's just this flop, which is kind of like an escaped shell, but it's like escaped. It's escaped being a shell because at the moment it's not a shell. And so it's in a process of becoming like a process of becoming, but also like but also I don't think this shell is going to reach a finality, because when it's being worn, something that's being worn on a person, they're both in development and they're both in process of their life and of their existence. And if you can see here, there's some interesting darting going on, just like seams in the middle of here. And something that I don't particularly like about this shirt is like the feeling. It feels like a plastic sponge, and it feels like it's kind of difficult to breathe. And I'm gonna look on Twitch and see, because I started streaming this and it just makes me wonder if like my video is working on here. But okay, what was I saying? Oh yeah, that this feels like a plastic sponge. And I'm not really sure what to do about that. But like, how do I transform that feeling? Something more. Is it in like the texture or some sort of stuffing? The shape of it? Okay. I am going to do something now. I'm going to get this yellow cotton basting thread and we're going to run a gathering stitch. And as we gather, I welcome you the viewer into this gathering. And so what we'll have is We'll do one back stitch. So by welcoming you into this gathering, we will move from plastic sponge to a living, breathing, a feeling of breathing, of sharing breath through virtual presence. And it will be the breath of our reflection in our heart-mind space. And I see some threads coming out here, some unraveling. So as we enter into the space together, some of our preconceived ideas of being individual might become unraveled as we gather, and symbolically and analogically, because something, as I am speaking through part of the idea of these streams is that sewing can become an analogy for a reflection of where you're at in your heart and your mind in that particular moment. And so for me, I'm speaking into where I'm at. And this poem can serve as a reminder for some of the energies that we're moving through. Moving through. What moving through? Okay, I guess I have a new follower on Twitch now. Sambo10YNWA. I'm not sure if you're a bot or if you're a human, but that's part of the gathering, I suppose. Sambo, shadow. What is Sambo responsive to? Oh, Sambo, you are human. Oh, it's midnight. Okay. Well, good night. Sleep well. And I'm doing a gathering stitch and reflecting on gathering. What is it to gather with my needle and thread? Good night. Is it? Well, right now I'm going. Sometimes when I am doing a running stitch like this, as I go in and out of the material, that reminds me of a breath also. And so when talking about gathering and gathering through virtual space while also on like a microcosmic plane, the act of gathering the parameters of this material what these breaths although a breath feels like air, it's like an exchange almost, and this needle and thread, it feels like it's going above and below and above and below, and it's exchanging between that and we're moving around. Maybe I should zoom out a little bit. We're moving around this part that used to be the sleeve. Then I cut the sleeve off. And there's a flower. The fake flower that I found on the street on my walk. That was part of a hair tie. All of these 4 flowers were all layered together to create this hair tie. And so there were 4 layers of flowers, and then there were 5 petals. And per flower, so in total that makes 20 petals. And so this running stitch is going to create a gathering. It's also going to give me flexibility in like how and where I'm gathering along the parameter. Like, do I just want to gather around this sleeve cap? And what does that do? And what does that become? What? And how are we going to accept that it feels like a plastic sponge? Are we going to accept that? Or I think in order to transform it, like, we have to accept it. So what does it want to become? What would you like to become, plastic sponge? Well, the first things that came to mind are a rainbow and sea turtle How could you become a rainbow or a sea turtle? How? Maybe that's part of your interconnectivity. We're gonna leave this part, this sleeve part. And then we have all this embroidery happening. And how does that speak to this? I mean, if we were talking about escaping shells, turtles have a shell, but they can't really escape it. It's connected to them. Egg, escape, escape, shell, escape. What is escape? There's like landscape, there's like scope. There's the not only like this garment that is coming into being, but also the context that it will be in. And I guess that makes me think of a rainbow, because there's a spectrum, like it could be anywhere. And it could evoke different feelings in different places depending on who it is. And so as I move into this area where I'm stitching around here, I'm imagining this also mirroring the gather up above. Warmth I am. Blackened backs, shadows turned, face to the sun. Each time I remember, I am brought to the present of my own thought patterns. And my thought patterns I'm remembering that it's midnight where Sambo is, and it's 4 p.m. where I am. And four p.m., one hour for each of the flowers. They're only pinned to the shirt as I gather along the perimeter, and they might be moved. When I was sewing a blanket stitch around the outside of the flower, I I was reflecting the black and white pattern on this material. And it's interesting because this stitch is, one word for it is a blanket stitch. And it kind of like outlines, but it being so contrasted and like it almost feels like bite marks or like teeth or something. And so all of them coming together to create like a perimeter. And so that first makes me wonder like how comfortable is that blanket? And then it makes me wonder, maybe depending on whose blanket it is. The turtles have, their shells are kind of like a blanket. And then and the other part is what blanket are these, each of these 4 flowers a blanket? Are they blanketing something? Is it some kind of blanketing, some kind of covering up, some kind of shield, as they're all open? But perhaps they won't stay open. Perhaps their petals might enclose their seed. The seed, the fruit that is the sun. Perhaps they will enclose the sun. Perhaps they will enclose the fruit that is the sun. They're not the only flower on here. There's other flowers. There's this flower. There's this flower. And shadows turned, face to the sun. The shadows that turn. I know that shadows have layers, and even in this moment, there are shadows. Shadows turned. These shadows that have turned, face towards the sun. Held by wonder. I also feel a reflection of warmth And the sun, if I am the fruit and I am the sun of my own reality, then that emanates from within. And I also find that as we gather, my relationships also reflect different aspects of awareness that come up. And what made me think of that was, in particular, this emanation and, oh sorry, you can't see my stitches. This emanation, but also of self, not just self, but self as everything, or self as no self. And so what we have now is some gatherings. I'm gonna get my chair. And I just don't really know what is happening with these. It's like they were made for each other. They were made for each other. I have like a little collection of plastic bits in here, and this was something that came on some kind of packaging, but that was calling. That was calling. And so we sew these parts that were like made to wrap around each other, but they're clearly like strained, like different parts are more stretched out than other parts, and it makes me want to wrap them and hold them. And if I look to the back, they're going through here, and I would like to finish them because the seam allowance is so small. I'd like to make them more stable somehow. And I wonder about just creating little pockets for them to exist inside. with another one of these materials. Pull through dreaded shoulder, this old shoulder, the shoulder that once was. Fruit is sun glow, pull through dreaded shoulder, relaxed shoulders, I need to relax my shoulders. Warmth, I am. And I almost wish I had some like silk organza to make these stay in one place. But maybe that's what this becomes. This plastic piece. This was what the I mean, this could become some sort of button. But these would need to be pulled through, and where they're at right now is like, I almost want them to just go together. Like glue together. But then they have these strange elastic wrappings. As strange isn't too descriptive. Maybe a flower. Does this become what the flower like what pulls through? Is this what the flower envelops, encloses as their fruit or as their sun? Because there's something just very uncomfortable and disposable that I feel. And it's all interlocked in this way that is, it's almost like enclosing towards the body. And it's also making me think of just something landing where it lands, like it didn't have something that lands where it lands. Makes me think of if like 50 people listen to the same song, they'll all receive it differently. It's all going to land differently in their body, in their minds. But how much of it is intended to land in a particular way? How is something how does it land differently for different people who maybe have similar things that they've experienced in their lives, similar experiences, it might land similarly. And oh, come on, you can come on through. So we have this sandwiching of flowers who have landed where they have landed. Coming through the plastic sponge. And at what point will it not be a plastic sponge? At what point will it become something else? And will it need to dismantle completely? Do we need to cut all of this up? It kind of reminds me of angel wings. But then, what is an angel wing even? Because in my associations, that makes me feel like polarized. Makes me feel like this is something that I've recognized that I could also be open to transforming, but it's like the angelic qualities in biblical narratives and how it contrasts with darkness and demonic energies. And while we're in the plane of imagination, transforming with the elements, to me, that is a space that kind of transcends the polarization between light and dark. And in that transcendence, there is a space of layers and density, which makes me think of sponges, because sponges are porous. They don't have a really they're not really dense. There's a lot of space for air and water. But the funny thing about plastic sponges is that it's not as breathable, so it's like, but maybe some are engineered to be breathable. But then thinking about the issues of plastics in the ocean, is that breathable? And this is what we're grappling with, because if we are all, if the illusion of being individual is truly an illusion, then on one hand we are the ocean, each of us, and all of us, and on the other hand, the hands come together and they recognize all the parts. And seeing it in another aspect would be that would be concerned with how we navigate our consciousness. And here we are navigating this through this recognition and acknowledgement of the materials that we're working with, because these are all all three of these materials have some kind of synthetic quality to them. And it has been said that plastics are not good for our skin and for the ocean. And while I don't believe that we should continue creating plastics, we also have a lot that are already here. And how do we process them? How do we process our relationship with them? How do we relate with them? And something that this is making me think of is synthetics, which comes from the word synthesis, which reminds me of like different parts coming together and having a synthesis. But the funny thing is that it might, if it's synthesized in its own existence, like this is a thing, and if it's synthetic, it's gonna take a long time to break down, because plastics take a long time to break down in the womb of the landfill, in the womb of the earth. And so but is that just makes me think that these are going to last a long time. And so instead of throwing them away, they should be re-synthesized, almost like their own essence needs to be given that attention and acknowledgement, that I am resynthesizing them. But then, does that mean that their existence kind of like, if they carry that energy of synthesis and resynthesis, is that going to be present everywhere that they engage with? Is that going to be present in the person embodying them in the context that they are in? That's what I wonder. And these two remain connected, and so for now, this is the synthesis. As the morning turns and swells, it was also the shadows that turned to face the sun. And so even in mourning, almost like what has happened? Why have we created this synthetic materials? That feels like a mourning to me. It feels like a grieving because, but as it turns and swells, the feeling then becomes a resynthesis and a recognition that these were made to be plastic, probably because it was cheap to manipulate these resources, and it was a quick fix, get rich to somebody's budget projections to make these out of low quality materials. But how do we reclaim their quality? By acknowledging them, and by cultivating a relationship with these things that are they could outlive us. But in that, if we are them, if they're not as inanimate as we've been told, and if they're recognized as animate matter, then we can authorize this synthesis, this resynthesis. And that's where I'm at. And where are my sisters at now? So scissors are in here somewhere. Oh, there's the stapler. I was looking for the stapler. Oh, here's these little scissors. This is what I really wanted. Speaking of rainbows and flowers and unicorns and turtles, sea turtles, and yeah, I feel like there's some things happening here. Can we zoom out? Zoom. Nope, not focus. Zoom out. Okay, there we go. these feelings, these motions, these shadows turned, shoulders, pull through, dreaded shoulder, this shoulder pull through, this feeling, that is not the shoulder, that is the side scope, side scope. There's this, like, okay, I don't know if you can see, but these shoulders. What is it like when I gather all of this? What happens? Just because it's on a curve and so it makes me wonder. And each of these petals, each of these ruffles in here, I want to bring a reflection between these. And here I see one. I do need to stitch this. We need to stitch this in place, but for now they're being held without interference. So this is the back that comes up and pins with this, and so part of me wants like these different parts to, I want to be pulling different parts from different parts. Here I want to pull through dreaded shoulder. Although this is a pocket, it's not quite a dreaded shoulder. I imagine something pulled through space, 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 something pulled through space, space, space. Okay, here we go. I have to go to the bathroom. What do I do if I'm streaming and I have to go to the bathroom? Maybe since it's been an hour, I stop and then I resume. Let's see. How do I stop? Chrome.